Hi guys, Janica here from Multispective, and I'm here to share with you a new episode where I interview Ina Shah. She talks about a congenitive heart failure that she sort of lived with throughout her childhood and the ways that it impacted not only her but also her family. She's an immigrant, an Indian born and raised in the US, so we talk quite a lot about what that means to be Indian in the US, how she managed to stay close to her culture, her religion, her faith, her community, how she's still very much in touch with her background and her ethnicity and understands so deeply what it means to be Indian in the US. And within that, we talk about the congenitive heart failure. And it's really interesting how her perspective or her take on death or on family connection or on boundaries comes into play given her condition, but also her background. Drop a comment, let us know what you think, and yeah, I can't wait to hear from you. Tell us a little bit about your upbringing and whereabouts are you, and yeah.
Yeah, so my parents both immigrated to the U.S. in 2000, and they immigrated because of job prospects. So my mom at the time, she was a homemaker. My dad was in IT. So he rode the IT wave in the early 2000s, got hit by it pretty badly as well. I was born actually in a hotel. Like my dad was working the IT at a hotel when I was born because he got a contract in California, but then immediately when the dot-com burst, he was kicked out of it. So then he had to basically scramble to find a job because of immigration laws. I feel like they're very similar now too. It's like if you don't have a job in a few months, then you're out. You have to go back to India. And that was their plan, to go back to India at that time. But my mom was pregnant with me, so she couldn't leave exactly. And it was a complicated pregnancy as well. So it just made it harder, and she didn't get the approval to fly such a long flight. So they had to make ends meet. So that's when my dad literally drove all the way from California to Buffalo, New York. I mean, if you aren't familiar with America's geography, it is from West Coast to East Coast.
Yeah.
So
Quite far.
it took them 5 days or something is what they say. My dad, just to make ends meet, he worked IT at a hotel at the time. My first moments of life were in a hotel, after the hospital. So very interesting story. So definitely not the most glamorous one, but soon after stuff got better. We had a really good life afterwards. And so I feel upbringing wise, my home, I always like to say that inside my home, it's very Indian. Outside my home is very non-Indian.
Okay.
In my family's perspective, we try to find Indian family friends. I don't know. I go back to India and I'm it's not that different.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And I guess this is it's common among a lot of different cultures or minorities. You're going to try to find other families and communities that are somewhat like you to feel that sense of belonging, to be able to relate to someone else.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah, and you mentioned that your parents moved in 2000, so they had predominantly their lives in India. So for them, maybe that was even more important. I need to feel, that I can connect with people. Is there quite a big community of Indians?
There is a huge community. We moved about 3 years ago. So, but my main childhood was spent in Michigan. Michigan, huge Indian community. And I think we found quite a bit of community. I think that's what stuck us there for quite a bit of time as well. Society wise, all bounded by religion, surprisingly. I feel we're Jains, so there's a Jain temple in a few miles outside Detroit. So that was probably the first thing that my parents always did whenever they came to a new state, was that they always went to the temple first. And you get so much about the community because the priest knows everyone.
Yeah,
who comes to the temple. So through the priest, they just got connected with so many families, just so much. That's a lot when religion connects a community. Yeah. But in America, it's a little bit more harder to make friends that way, just because everyone values privacy a lot more comparably to Indians.
Yeah.
So I think religion is a very easy way for people to make friends here.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Now, what has that done for your own personal identity though? Do you feel you've taken little bits of, the Indian culture and background and then also bits of the Western ones, or would you say you really strongly identify as an Indian?
See, that's a very interesting question because I low-key think that I have like two personalities. I've spoken about this like quite a bit with people. Actually, like going off of the Jainism part, there's also a group called like Young Jains of America, which like combines all the all like people my age and like 14 to 29 in like America. Like it's like a big like organization like cut off, and like we have like conventions and meetings all the time. So I actually went to like one of like the retreats like a few weeks ago, and that was actually a huge part. It was like, how much has Jainism affected your life? And one of like the main things in that was that I, growing up from age like 6, I want to say, I have been so involved with like my temple, going different prayers, going different functions, like everything, because like my parents' social life was tied to that temple, which meant that mine was as well. And I found a lot of my close friends through the temple. I found a lot of my community through that temple as well.
Talk to me about, because, you know, you've brought up religion and that being a baseline sort of for your, maybe your identity and your, you know, seeking out of friends and community and belonging. What would happen if you had decided today that I don't identify too strongly with this particular religion. Actually, I want to explore other religions, or I don't want to associate too strongly with one. I just want to be free from it all and kind of just like, you know, spread out a little bit and kind of meet different people of different cultures. Like, how do you think your parents would take it?
Honestly, I think my dad would take it amazingly because he's been going on a Buddhism track these days.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah.
Bro found like a book, like it's called The Wise Heart, if anyone's interested. But apparently it describes Buddhism philosophy very well. As for him, he's encouraged me to read it. I've yet to get to it. But he's like found similarities between Jainism and Buddhism. That'll be like a very like, if you want to get coffee with him, like that is what he will talk to you about.
Right.
So he's very explorative in that way. So I think it would not be a problem for me. Like, even like the basis of Jainism is live and let live. The entire religion is rooted on the basis of I don't harm any beings, and I do not not that I do not expect to get harmed by beings, but if I do, I will not harm back. Almost like the entire thing of Jainism is like not eating meat, not eating like root vegetables, anything like all of it is like not harming beings. So I think a lot of it is not just like constrained to you have to follow your own religion. I feel like it's a lot like you can follow whatever beliefs bring the most peace to you, I want to say.
Can you talk to us a little bit about the root vegetables? What does that have to do with harming of beings?
Yeah, so scientifically, a root vegetable, because it grows underground, it has a lot more beings attached to it. And these beings, they aren't like ants or whatever. They're like 1 sensed, 2 sense beings, like microorganisms attached to these vegetables. And especially when you pull them out from the ground, it like harms a lot of more beings than it would be than say like you're picking like a strawberry off of a bush. And that has been subject to being like when we pull them out, it hurts beings, like you're hurting more beings by pulling out say like a potato from the ground than it would be like again from the strawberry off of a bush. So that's why Jains, they tend not to eat root vegetables.
It's difficult living in this world. I mean, like I would think that probably only India is the only place that, you know, you could live a completely Jain diet outside of the home, but anywhere else, you know, it's hard to ask a restaurant not to put any garlic. It's
hard.
In their food,
I mean, it's hard to find vegetarian food, like let alone find like food without onion and garlic and like potatoes.
But what other kinds of philosophies do they believe in that you feel you can connect with, you can relate to, and, you know, as a community, it sort of brought you closer to? And
because like there's a karmic theory as well. That's actually a really good point. Jains believe a lot in karma, like that you are, and whatever is happening to you in your life right now is a series of all the past deeds that you've done. Like in my situation, what like a lot of people have said is that like it's good because like me going through this is like me getting rid of like a bunch of like the bad karma that I've gone through. in the
Oh,
past few lives. So that is like the reason. I mean, everybody tries to justify everything in life.
yeah,
So I guess this is like a justification if you think about it in one way.
yeah.
But that is like how like people, at least Jains, like refer to like the world in that way, that like something really good happens to you. Oh, good. Like all of your good karma like paid off. Something bad happens
Mm,
to you. At least you'll be getting rid of your bad karma, because in our thing, it's like, okay, like say, I don't know, you you get into a car crash, like someone crashes into your car, god forbid that ever happens to you, but
mm,
say if it does, then it's like in your past life you may have harmed someone in the same way that they are harming you in
yeah,
this way right now.
yeah,
And usually they say that there's like accounts almost. Say somebody comes into your life as like a partner, or what, as like a sister, or like any like close relationship. Like that
mm,
meant that like you still have like some like unresolved
yeah,
duties or like interactions left with them that you were not
mm,
able to finish in like your past life, and thus you met again in this
right.
life.
Yeah,
You don't finish out your account or whatever. It's like that's also the thing. It's like Jainism's like you die, but your soul never dies. It's
mm,
like your soul
yeah,
just keeps on getting recycled and recycled and recycled.
yeah, yeah.
That you keep on meeting all these other souls.
So, this would be a really good segue into your story because, I think listeners right now really want to know what is this karmic sort of view that you
All
owe to
my
this
bad
universe.
karma.
Exactly. And, and I want to bookmark this question for after we delve into your story because I feel like, it's so, yeah, I mean, I don't know how I would feel about, if people were justifying my, situation with that. But let's begin with getting into your story first. So please, the floor is yours.
Yeah, and I really don't know what to say. I mean, I feel like I do have to introduce myself in that way with the story, but
Yeah.
um, not getting into too much detail. Let's just say that I'm in my early 20s, from an Indian family, and am dealing or was dealing with quite a bit of heart issues that have thankfully and fortunately been lesser heart issues in the past few months.
So is there a term for this heart issue that you're
Yeah.
experiencing?
So congestive heart failure, CHF. I feel like I can go into a lot of more medical terms, but I'm not
Yeah.
sure if they would be understood by people. So I guess like in very vague terms, my heart is just like it was not able to pump blood as efficiently and as effectively as a normal person's heart would be able to.
Right.
And thus, it took quite a few months to get it to the point that it was at, because there was a lot of like fluid retention. There was like a lot of like other like minor like problems to it as well. And then thankfully in the past month and a half, I've been able to get a device implanted like right here that has helped my heart pump blood better.
Right. Like a pacemaker, right? So it's
Pacemaker.
sort of
Pacemaker is the name. It's actually an ICD.
right.
So it is a type of pacemaker, but it's good. I mean, I'm glad. I'm very, 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 very fortunate to have it in my body. It does
Yeah.
feel weird that a piece of metal is doing something that an organ can't do, but we're
Yeah.
getting there.
Yeah. That's crazy. So does it sort of work like an external muscle, sort of just like helps to like, pump the heart in a sense?
Yeah, so its job really is to like control heart rhythm and give shocks like when needed. So it's basically there just to be like, okay, like say like I'm out and about my daily life and like it feels like a shock is needed, like I won't have to basically run to the hospital. It will just like do its job like
Right.
while I'm doing life.
Right. Okay. So it's good in the sense that it's pretty non-intrusive
It's
in the sense that you don't.
non-intrusive in that
Right.
sense. Yeah, that it
Yeah.
like it's there. It's gonna be there for quite a bit of time, possibly
Yeah.
forever. But it's not like I can like move around and stuff, and like it won't harm me.
Right. And
Yeah.
so when did you sort of, you or your family sort of notice that something was not quite right for you? What actually happened that made you?
Yeah, so basically, long story short, I had hypoglycemia for quite a few years prior to this. December 2022, I got a pancreatic surgery, which alleviated those symptoms and alleviated that condition to quite a minimum. But during that week, we found out that, okay, I may be very susceptible to heart disease in the near future, considering how much of a toll this condition has taken on me for the past few years. So, going off of that, we were like, okay, let's just focus on recovery, everything, like, and the doctor was also like, this is always probable. Like, everyone in this world is at risk for heart disease. You are a little bit more. That is how my doctor put it as, and my doctor was like, we'll monitor, we'll see what happens, and we'll see how it goes. Like, there's nothing to be like, you don't need to like have like regular visits with the cardiologist right now. Like, we'll see how it goes. So from there, it went to almost exactly a year ago. So a year ago, I started feeling a lot more like heaviness, tightness, like just like it just didn't feel good in the heart, like in like the chest region. And that concerned me and my family enough to, okay, let's go check it out. So we get it checked out, everything, and that's where it's like, okay, you are at stage 2 heart failure. So
At
I'm
that
like,
point, were you,
okay.
what was going through your head? Were you like, okay, wait, now we really need to delve into this. Like, what really is this? What does it
I
mean?
was just like, I genuinely thought it was insane anxiety or something at that point. I was not expecting heart failure or any sort of like tag of like a cardiac condition. Like, in anything, I was expecting something with like my pancreas or something. Like, that's like where my mind was going. That's different. Like, everyone's body is like weird. Like, I've heard stories like during like my time here of like people's legs hurting and like something's wrong with like their shoulder or whatever. Like, the body's connected very weirdly. So I genuinely did not think of cardiac.
Right.
Like, that was not my thing. So just like getting into that was, I was in denial for quite a bit of time. I want to say I was in denial for about like 5 to 6 months about it.
Wow.
Like, I went through it. Like, I knew, like, I feel like, I don't even know, like, what, like, the mental word of it was, but, like, my knew what I was going through. Like, my mind was very aware. But, like, my subconscious was very aware of, like, what was going on, but my mind just did not want to accept it.
Right.
So, all throughout all the procedures, all the hospital stays, everything, my mind would try to just be, okay, I am normal, I am fine, nothing's happened to me.
Right.
And that's like where I was trying to live my normal life, I was trying to do everything normal. I tried to block this out of my mind and my own life, that like, I don't know, like, I don't even know if I was trying to like fool myself or not with it, but like, I was just in denial until like October 2020, it hit me more that, okay, like, you're actually going through something. You're actually, like, this is an actual problem. And I think at that point, like, I went through, like, a very tough time. Like, mentally, that it was, like, a very big, like, thing that, okay, this is an actual thing in you.
Yeah.
You, like, because, like, it was, like, a lot of things where I had, like, death and stuff, like, looming around me in the months before. But for some reason, I just didn't accept it, like, completely, like, mentally. I was trying to, like, make peace with it. Like, okay, it's fine. Like, it's, like, at one point in my mind, I was, like, not to offend anyone, but it was, like, okay, life isn't that important anyway. Like, it's fine. Like, I've done what I wanted to do.
Right.
Like, it was, like, I don't know mentally how to describe, like, how I was at that time. But it was just, like, it didn't hit me completely until
so it's like on the one
later.
hand, you were right. So like on the one hand, you wanted to, repress this as much as possible and lead your life as normal in hopes that maybe, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. If I tell myself enough that I'm okay, then I will be okay. But on the other side,
until I make it, like,
yeah, exactly.
until
and
I
then
couldn't
the other
fake
side,
it anymore.
Exactly, right. And then you have the other side of you that's kind of like downplaying, the actual situation from
Mm-hmm.
maybe potentially how bad it is because you again are trying to appease yourself to be like, okay, no, it's fine. It's not gonna matter anyways.
Yeah.
Like I've done whatever I need to do, like it's fine.
Mm-hmm. Like,
But
and
what
I
about
think,
at
no,
home?
sorry,
Like
go ahead.
yeah, like what about at home? Like your parents, family, community, like were they sort of like bombarding you with it, reminding you of it, or were they sort of just like, okay, just we're just gonna pretend it's not existing as well?
So it was kind of the opposite where I was very much like, I'm fine. Like,
Yeah.
I think because I'm also an only child. I don't know if I mentioned that or not, but
Mm,
I'm an only child as well, and my parents, like Indian parents, uber protective. Like,
right. Yeah.
considering like the story that like I told you about like how I was born and everything, it was like my parents were like their number one mission in life, like, and as much as I love them, respect them, I don't know if this is like the most healthiest upbringing or not for me, but their number one mission was that Ina be comfortable. Like,
Hmm.
Ina be comfortable, Ina be happy, Ina be safe.
Right.
After that, nothing else matters for them.
Right.
And in situations like this, where you have to go to the doctor, you have to like be in these like crazy like procedures, you have to have these like insane things done to you,
Hmm.
that protectiveness increases tenfold, if not like 1,000-fold.
Hmm.
Like that amount of whatever can make Ina comfortable is what we will do.
Right.
And my mom, she would be sitting next to me, and like her face would just be like, I don't know like how to describe it, but it'd be like so much worry that like in a way I felt guilty. And I feel like a lot of like health guilt
Hmm.
come like guilt in patients is like a very big thing,
Yeah.
because it's like you're guilty that the people around you have to go through so much because of you,
Right.
and that even like you have to go through so much, but like I feel like a lot of it is like your loved ones are going through so much because of you,
Yeah.
and your loved ones do it without a complaint, do it without support, like they have their sleepless nights, they have everything, and
Hmm.
then you're like, okay, did I just like I caused it myself, like in
Right.
a way, because like you can't, sadly you can't like detach your condition from your own self.
Hmm.
So you have like this, you're just like over there thinking like, okay, I caused myself this condition,
Right.
I am causing everyone pain.
And this is actually making me think about something that you said earlier, like that. I'm kind of sort of seeing why, in a way, you were convincing yourself everything was okay. It was like you were convincing that to yourself to, put it aside, but also you were probably trying to convince your parents that too on the
Mm-hmm.
outside, reminding them that, hey, look, nothing to worry about. Look, I'm fine. Like, hey,
Like,
look, I'm comfortable.
I'm
Like,
living
this is,
life.
I'm
Like,
living that life. Like, you guys can just relax. I wanted to ask, because with something like I can completely understand. I feel like to an extent as well, me being an Indian, I can relate to that. Our parents really, they live their lives for us, right?
yeah.
And they do it sometimes what their version of a happy life or a happy future
Yes.
for us, and without realizing that the impact of their worry, it can be really, really, negatively impacting our mental health too, because
Yeah.
then we end up living a life feeling obligated to keep them happy at all times, or to give them this image that, hey, look, I'm fine, like I'm great, I'm doing perfectly fine. So it ends up becoming this sort of like cycle where we want them to feel comfortable, they want us to feel comfortable, and so we're just feeding each other this
Mm-hmm.
thing. And the actual reality of like me having a mental breakdown over what's happening cannot be revealed to them by any means, because God forbid they find out that I'm panicking, like all hell would break
Oh,
loose.
they're panicking even more.
Exactly 10 times, right?
Yeah.
So I get that, but can you talk to me about, and yeah, about boundaries? So I think boundaries is a the reason why I asked this question is because sometimes it is necessary. It is a difficult conversation sometimes to have with parents, especially when they're coming from a very good place and well intentioned, but also recognizing that this is heavy on me. Watching this is adding guilt to what I'm already experiencing. I've got to draw a line here. Yeah. what's that been like for you?
I feel like that is like, it's funny because that has been something that I've struggled with in the past like 2 to 3 years, I want to say, is that like me getting into college, like trying to have like a little bit more of like, because I feel like my parents, like they also like, they haven't gone to college here. They've gone to college in India, and their time in like college is very different than mine. And not to say like college itself, but just like me growing up. And I think like with this medical part of my life, they are very involved parents, and they have all right to be involved as well. I mean, like, which parent does not want to know what their child is like going through, like medically, or if like their child is in deep trouble and whatnot. And in this part, like, I was in deep trouble in a way. Like, I like definitely need my parents, and my parents would just be like, okay. And my parents are a little bit like, I want to say like firefighters in a way. Like, firefighter is like a good like example that they are like, I want everything that is best for my daughter, like, and they go into the thing that I'm young, I can't see my entire future. They, with their experience, they can. So it's like, they kind of have like these like fire extinguishers, and they try to extinguish everything from my life that they think could possibly harm me. They fail to realize, I mean, they are realizing, I don't want to say fail to realize, they are realizing that I'm going to need to like find my own fire extinguisher. I'm going to need to extinguish my fire myself from time to time. For me to potentially also be in that position where I'm going to be extinguishing a fire for someone else. Like, I feel like that is like a very big transition that me and my family are going through right now. Considering also, I think only child, I think that's where only child syndrome from the parents come from, is that all and every attention is on you. And don't get me wrong, I love attention, but not like to the point where like, I think like now I'm also getting into a part where I want to make my own decisions, like maybe not medically. I feel like I rely on my parents quite a bit more, or at least I rely on someone. I don't think like that's also very big of a thing where like I don't trust myself a lot with like a lot of things. So I think I do rely on a lot of other people, or like idolize a lot of other people to be something bigger than they are. And then like base off my decisions off of them. Like what they say. So that's again with boundaries, I think like it's like having designations on like where I want to take my own decisions versus where I want them to take decisions for me. Like I'm still a child at heart. Like please don't leave me alone. But
but leave me alone in certain areas.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that is something that we are somewhat going through.
Yeah, it gets very hard sometimes just changing a certain dynamic that's sort of been built in for so long. And especially, you know, adding on another factor where, you know, it strengthens whatever original sort of dynamic there was. And then you add in another factor like a medical condition, and all of a sudden, whatever protectiveness they've had has become much stronger.
I know.
And now you're like, okay, like how do we sort of, you know, unravel some of it and sort of change that dynamic a little bit. But I do want to go a little bit more into this heart condition. You mentioned earlier that you had no choice but to face this reality and accept. What was it that happened and that caused this?
So just like a area of like other things that like I might not want to delve deeper into right now, but just like other things that like this heart condition blocked from happening. So at that point, it was like, okay, we have to like actually accept reality and accept that this is like an actual like thing. Just for, it was other medical procedures, so it was like other things that like could have happened easily, say if I was not a heart patient, but they didn't. So I think like at that point, it like, I don't know, it hit me like a lot more that okay, I have to go through this. There has to be an acceptance that I am different than the normal person, and that my difference will lead me to have like different outcomes.
Right.
So I think like a lot of that, like that point, because up until that point, I think a lot of it is also with America's healthcare as well, is that like all the nurses here, all the doctors here, they're like, high on optimism. Like, it's like you have like a 10% chance of living. They will maximize that 10% to look like it's 100. Because that's also where, like, mentally, that's also where you get hope from as well. Like, if like a person goes into an operating room thinking that, okay, there's a 99% chance that I'm not going to survive this procedure, their mental state is going to be that way. And I've, like, from experience, a lot of it works on, like, whatever your mental state is, or like manifestation. So my mental state was very much like, there was not full acceptance. There was also like a underlying thing that, like, okay, I'm gonna get through this. And everybody around me, all my doctors, all the nurses, everyone, like, literally even like the cashier, like, at the pharmacy was like, you're gonna get through this, like, no worries.
Yeah, right.
So I think, and frankly, they don't have anything else to say either. Like, which, like, nurse is gonna, like, come up to you and be like, sorry, bud, you're not gonna get through this.
Yeah.
Like, that's not what they do either. So I think a lot of it, like, contributed to, like, me not being able to, like, fully accept the seriousness of it until I get this other doctor saying, like, there's a problem here with, like, your medical history.
Right.
Then it's like, okay, maybe I'm actually not getting through this.
And so when you first, last year, when you first sort of, like, you know, went to get a checkup because of the heart, the congested feeling that you were feeling in your chest, you mentioned that you were sort of like in denial, you know, you were like, everything is going to be fine. But were you also going regularly for for checkups, and all the way up until that point, everything was looking okay, a-okay, like it was going to be okay?
I want to say ebbs and flows.
Yeah.
Like, there were many, many, many hospital stays. Like, I think, like, for months and months, like, at a time. That, like, there would be, like, so, like, what, like, the hospital has is, like, a therapeutic leave, like, procedure where, like, you're allowed to leave the hospital for, like, a few hours at a time. And I, like, grasped those, like, immediately, like, any chance. Like, I'd just be like telling, like, my doctor that, like, okay, can I leave now? And, like, my doctor would be like, you know, you took one yesterday. I'm like, can I leave though, please? Like, can I please go live my normal life, please?
Right. Yeah.
So, I think, like, there was that, but then there was also, like, a lot of, like, hospital stay. There were, like, months and months. Like, I've spent many, many nights at the hospital.
Right.
So, yeah, all of that was there, but therapeutic leaves, like, God bless whoever created those, because those kept me sane.
Right. What were the reasons that you were staying in the hospital during that time? Yeah, during that whole time period. What were the reasons that you
so basically monitoring, making sure that nothing gets worse, because there were times, admittedly, when things were bad. Like, it'd be like the heart rate's way too high, your heart isn't getting enough oxygen, not enough blood. Like, there'd be, like, blood transfusions, like, a lot of, like, stuff was going on that it's hard to pinpoint the only reason why I was in the hospital for so long, but I think it was just, like, a lot, and a lot was also, like, this can quickly deteriorate, so we don't want to let it go to that level, and thus we shall keep her here, which I am very grateful for in looking back, because, like, even in, like, waiting rooms like this one, honestly, like, that were, like, other patients and everyone, like, I've gone home for, like, 2 nights, and I come back to the hospital, and my condition is, like, 50% worse now.
Right.
So it's, like, God bless that, like, I think, like, these hospital stays and, like, all the care received has kept me alive, honestly, at this point.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
So you say that it's irregular heartbeat. Can you walk me through if you were to do strenuous exercise? Or, I mean, what are the conditions or what are the risks with strenuous exercise, or feeling stressed or overwhelmed, like emotionally, what that kind of can do to the heart rate? Or, you know, I don't know, you've got an exam coming up soon, and, you know, that can cause, you know, irregular heartbeat for anyone. What do the doctors sort of say to you about that?
So I think, like, the thing with, like, a regular heartbeat, it's not like it's simply irregular heartbeat. It's also the fact that, like, you have to, like, really, like, see is that, like, your heart is not able to pump your blood. Like there's like a lot of like common like rapid heartbeat is like when like you're all stressed and like you're all ready to go, and like your heart's just pumping blood at like a higher rate, but there's no problem in the heart pumping. It gets a little bit harder because like the heart's struggling as well to pump like your regular blood, let alone much more like faster pump.
Right.
So I think with strenuous exercise, like I admittedly, like I am not strong right now. Like I think like I have like, because this is also one more thing with this condition is that like your condition, like April 2023 versus like April 2024, Ina, like despite symptoms getting better, I feel like the aftermath of all of like the physical trauma that the body has gone through, it's coming on me now. Like, I feel like till that point, my body, like, all the strength that I had in me, I was, like, doing, like, everything that I could to, like, keep it at that level. But, like, now it's, like, all that strength has, like, lessened over time. And now, like, even though, like, I want to say symptoms are getting better, it's, like, my overall, like, physical state is very, very weak. Like, I was, like, with my mom getting groceries the other day, and I tried to like hold like a milk, like a gallon of milk. I don't know, like in America, like, you get like an entire like gallon of milk. I was trying to carry that thing. I like could not carry like that with like one hand, like for like 2 blocks, and that was sad for me. I was like, okay, you know, like you aren't strong, and that gallon of milk, like it probably weighs like I don't know, like 5 pounds maybe. Like it's not heavy by any means, but it's still like my entire arm was like shaking at that point. So I was like, okay. It's like one of those things where like you have to get up and get moving as much as you can. But like, but it's like small steps like that. But like grateful to have people to help me. The thing with emotion though and anxiety, it's that like I feel like this entire year has just made me much more anxiety ridden, I guess. Like where like I will start to become anxious at the smallest like news or whatever, just because I've heard so much in the past year that anxiety wise, like it's not good for you. Anxiety is not good for anyone. It's definitely not good for someone who's going through medical problems. But it's also something that like you just have to get your mind through. And like my mind like is at peace when I have like a plan B in mind. Like when I'm at peace with my plan B, like no matter what is happening to plan A, I'll be fine. I'm like, okay, at least I have a backup.
Yeah. Like, and that's awesome that you sort of like know what are sort of the things that trigger you and what are the things that you can do to calm your sort of your own mental
that's
state.
Like I have been so hyper vigilant about like any pain that like now I think I'm equally as hyper vigilant about any emotion that I feel. Like it's like, okay, I'm upset. Why am I upset? How can I not be upset? What can I do to prevent myself from being upset? Like it's like a 3-step plan that like my mind goes through immediately, just because like it's like the same thing with pain. Like my doctor's always like, you have shoulder pain. Okay, what time did the pain happen? What caused this pain? What doesn't cause this pain? And I have to report everything to him. So now it's like a standard procedure in my mind. Like, okay,
almost kind of healthy in a way, because you know it's teaching you how to sort of like learn something about yourself and just observe a situation non-judgmentally, or like remove the judgment from an emotion that you're experiencing, and actually just kind of being like, okay, let's just analyze this and break this down so I can understand it better. And I can, work through it, as opposed to, feeling angry at yourself for feeling upset over something,
Yeah. Low key, yes. But also, like, my therapist at this point, like, I started seeing a therapist, I want to say like November of 2023. When, like, finally, when this all hit me, and I was like, okay, I need help. So, I saw a therapist, and, like, actually, like, our most recent conversation, she was like, okay, like, have you felt like any like negative emotions in like the past week? So like I literally like pull out my notes app and like I start reading to her, and she's like, Ina, what is this? And I'm like, you asked me, I'm telling you, like here you go. And it's like every single thing. Like, okay, I woke up in the morning and I just felt sad. Like this is hypothetical, but like I woke up in the morning and I felt sad. I felt sad because of this, and this is what I thought about me being sad. And my therapist was like, just stop right there. Like, this is like way too much like detail that like now you're in a way you're gonna like stop or like force yourself internally not to feel these emotions anymore because you know that they're like wrong, or like you should like stop feeling this way. Like, so in that way she was also like, don't be so hypervigilant, let your emotions come in the way that they come, because the minute that you stay hypervigilant, you're also going to persuade your body to feel happy emotions and ignore the sad emotions. So sort of put it into perspective that like, okay, maybe a little bit OCD with my emotion tracker, but yeah, like
that's interesting, because I think like for you, it started off like what triggered you to sort of really observe your emotions was a physical thing, right? It was a physical condition that made you think, okay, like I shouldn't allow myself to feel too much negative emotion because of the impact it can have on my heart and on my body, right? Physiologically for me. So I'm going to keep track of it. But yes, in doing so, it potentially, it could, I can see how it could end up becoming sort of like negative. I think rather, so long as it's sort of like being done in a healthy way, like, okay, allowing yourself to feel it, but also processing it, sort of having that good balance, that middle ground where you can feel the emotions, you can express the emotions, you know, maybe in an emotional way through art, through music, you know, that kind of stuff, really feel that emotion, while at the same time, you know, be like, okay, now I've felt the emotion. What can we do from this point? How do I get myself out of it?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, I do know a lot of people, for example, you know, who may be undergoing something like depression, or, you know, and maybe they sit in that emotion a lot. They go into very, very dark places and they stay in it. And maybe the issue is that they haven't quite, when they're in that emotion, struggle to find a way to relieve it as well, to release it, right?
Yeah.
And so I think, I mean, at least the way I would say it is sort of like, maybe balancing, having that sort of a bit of both, right?
Yeah, and I think like at least like America's perspective, now I can't speak for every single country on this world, but I think America's perspective, a lot of it is like problem solving. Like, how can I get out of something? And that's where like the thing with like depression or any other mental health thing comes in, is like a lot of therapists, and I've gone through it quite myself too in these past few months, but I think a lot of it is like, how do I get out of this? Or how do I prevent what is causing this from happening? Like, they're very, I think that's also the thing with America's healthcare in general, now that like I also, like, one thing about me is that I think through I talk. So I'm a talker when I think, but like I just like made like the connection that like a lot of America's healthcare, let it be physical or mental, is very symptom relieving. Like, it is not very much fixing the cause. It is either mentally, like, it's like, okay, like, I don't know, you have a toxic relationship with like your mom, cut your mom out. Like, that is like primarily what, like, exactly, bandage. Yeah. And it's like, even like healthcare wise too, like I walked past like the hospital cafeteria today. What did I see? Doritos. Are Doritos good for you? No. Do Doritos cause a lot of problems for your body? Yeah, if you eat it quite a bit, but no, there's still Doritos in the hospital. And then you have the same hospital relieving the symptoms that you get from eating Doritos.
So painkillers is another one of those, right?
Exactly. Like I have been prescribed every single painkiller under like this planet probably for like my pain. Do I need that much? No. Can I do it with a simple ibuprofen? Yes. But like, that's also business. So I feel like this is also very much of a topic that I'm very passionate about. Just like call out America. Like, as much as I'm very grateful for them, it's also like to like call them out in some way. It's that, like, it's all a big business.
Yeah, and I think, you know, it also fits in with the current trend of like, you know, the younger generation, which is, you know, the instant gratification, right? I'm feeling pain right now because I've got a headache, and so I'm going to take a painkiller rather than write it out, because I need instantly to get rid of that pain. In the same way it works with, you know, jobs. I'm going to go and apply for a job that's going to straight up pay me like 50K rather than, you know, rise up to the top, you know, take my time to build my way up to the top, you know?
Exactly.
Right. Social media, all of it. It's like, what can I do to give me the quickest result?
That's where anxiety comes in too. It's like, I feel like for me too, now that like you say it, it's like, okay, I get like a small problem. Like, I don't know, like my GPA, like it's not a perfect like 4.0. Like, okay, I'm not going to get an A in a class. I'm sitting in stress right now because I'm not going to get an A, instead of like thinking at long term that, okay, like is my A like going to be that big of a deal to me in the near future? It may be, it may not be, but it's also like the thing, it's like life doesn't go out the way that you want it to, and I feel like that's where that instant gratification comes, that you want life to go the way that you want it to go.
Yeah, exactly.
And then it can't, now that you're struggling.
Can you talk to me about, you mentioned earlier sort of confronting death. And I want you to tell me a little bit about the effect that it's had on your views of life in general, because this kind of ties in with what you just said about realizing, does that A really matter in the long term of things, right? So yeah, just talk to me about how that's shifted your perspective.
Yeah, so that, I think, like, I was 7 years old when I overheard my parents, like, speaking with my doctor, and it was with the hypoglycemia. It was not with the cardiac, but that's when the first part, when I heard my parents asking, okay, what can the long-term complications of this be? And my doctor was like, it can be in an early death. And at that point, I didn't know. I was freaked out about death at that point. I was like, okay, like, I'm only 7. And at that point, I also remember this because this was like, not to offend anyone again, but I don't know if you remember 2012, December something, 2012, I want to say December 22nd, 2012,
Okay.
was like when like the Mayan calendar was ending, and everyone was like, okay, it's going to be the end of the world.
Oh, yes.
So basically, I was turning 10 that year. 2012 was my 10th birthday. And I'm born on Christmas. So it was 3 days before my birthday. I had the worst breakdown that I am not going to see age 10.
Right.
But that was my mindset at that point, was that death, I was freaked out about it. Was that I did not want to die. Like, I wanted to, like, my mind at that point would be, like, I remember at age 7, like, I think I was very much into American Girl, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with, but it's, like, a doll brand in the States, and it's very popular over here with the young girls, but American Girl is releasing a doll, like, in, like, a few months, and when I heard that conversation, my first thought was, like, I'm not going to see that doll. I need to see that doll. So I think just, like, going back, like, it's funny, but, like, thinking about at that time, I think I was just scared of all the things that I wasn't going to be able to do in my life.
Right.
And slowly, I feel like after, like, the entire Mayan calendar ended, but, like, I still celebrate my 10th birthday, I think at that point, and, like, a few months after, I think I started making peace with the fact that, okay, maybe this isn't that serious. Like, I haven't died. It's been, like, 3 or 4 years at this point. Like, I haven't died. Like, I think I can keep going.
Yeah.
And at that point, like, nobody even mentioned that. So it was a little bit like, okay, like, I will, like, be fine. And then a few years ago, so I want to say like 20, I started getting a lot more like low blood sugar, like, drops, I think, a little bit. I think it was just like puberty and everything, me just like growing up and everything. So I think at that point, I finally asked my doctor, and I was like, okay, what's the worst that can happen with this? And he was like, the worst that can happen with this is death. That's the worst that can happen with any condition. Now, the thing is, and then he saw me like anxious, so he was like, the thing is over here, that death is very interesting, but it's always something not to be feared about, because whenever you fear death, you are always going to be troubled by it more, and you pushing it away is just going to build negative emotion into you. So in a way, let it come to you when it comes to you, because frankly, no one knows when it's going to come. Like, we've had miracle survivors, and we've had people who we thought were going to survive, and they haven't survived, unfortunately. But, like, in anyone's last moments, being fearful, being, like, in, like, a bad state is always worse than someone leaving happily. Like, you want to, like, experience your last moments anywhere. with like a happiness. Like it's always like he brought the analogy of like having a good meal.
Right.
Like you have like dessert in front of you. A lot of humans have a tendency of saving the best bite for last.
Yeah.
Like you always almost save like the best bite for last, and that's sort of like the way that he framed it was like always save the best for last. Like don't spend all your time just like being so caught up with like the fact that okay, my life's gonna end, to the fact that like you don't live your life.
Yeah. And that's a really good way to put it.
I don't know what happened in me at that point, but after like a few days after hearing that, I think like I just like magically made peace that life is like temporary, and that definitely carried forward during these past few months. Versus like I was just grateful to see every single day, like every single day new adventure. I don't know when this adventure is gonna end. It could end like in a few hours. It could end next week. It could end like in 50 years. Like we don't know.
Yeah.
But I think like the biggest part was that I also got to appreciate like the small things in life, like I don't know, pretty sky or whatever. Like I will genuinely take like a few more minutes to like appreciate that, because there's so many people on this planet who don't even get to see like a pretty sky. So it's like stuff like that. It's like you kind of take your eyes off of the big picture of life and start like zooming into the small things in life.
Right.
And I think that's like the biggest part that accepting death has been for me. Like right now I want to say that like I can't say for certain, but if like somebody puts me on an operating room and it's like we're gonna try our best, but like there's like a 99.99999% chance that you're gonna die, I don't think I will be as fearful as I would have been a few years ago.
Yeah. Is this something that you try to preach to your parents too?
No, because my parents are not ready to hear that. Like I think it's a lot of like an introspective thing, which like you honestly can't even like. You're probably like the first person that like talked about this with like a really big like I don't know, like all through, but like even with like friends or like extended family or anyone, like they all care about you, right? So like nobody wants you, and I think as a society we stigmatize like death so much that like it's kind of like one of those like nobody wants to accidentally manifest it.
Yeah.
So everyone avoids talking about it. Or everyone's like, okay, just like shut up, like don't talk about that. And that's kind of where it leads to be much more introspective, where it's like, okay, like at least I'm fine. Like, or at least like I've reached that state, because like I'm at least happy about that I've at least reached that state. And then like convincing others, I don't think that's in my power. Yeah. Like I don't think I'll be able to ever convince my parents, or I don't think my parents will ever reach that state where they will be okay with me not being in their life.
Yeah.
Permanently. Like I don't think that is something that they will ever be able to grasp, and they've had to face that multiple times in the past few months, like multiple times, because like every procedure has like the standard risk of death and stuff like this, like it's a little bit higher, like, and that's where like you see all the anxiety coming in too, is that like that's where all the protectiveness, all the anxiety, every single emotion from them, that's where that kicks in.
Right.
But I think any parent at this point would just be like, I'll go, but like save my child.
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like nobody on the outside can really, really understand what that person, or what death really means until they're, confronting it themselves.
Exactly.
I really, really do want to ask you that pressing question that I was going to ask you earlier. So when people try to appease you or try to reason with you as to what's happening in your life, and they use, religion, they use karma as that reason, and they tell you like, oh yeah, this is what your soul's journey is supposed to go through. How do you feel personally about that?
So I actually talked about this with the chaplain here. So the hospital, like, they have like a chaplain like who I'm like best buddies with. So this chaplain, I actually like told him like, do you believe in karma? And then like he was like, personally, I don't. He's Christian, so he like he believes in like Jesus like dying for all of our sins, and like Jesus will make us better. So he's always like, I always pray to God for every single person that like God will make them better. Or that like so then I asked him, I'm like, okay, then why am I going through this as per you? And he was like, I think God is just trying to make you stronger. So that to me, like, I love this person. Like, honestly, like, I confide in him, like, a lot. Yeah. But I think just, like, these two words, one that, like, God is making you, and the other thing is that, like, strong. Like, to me, I, like, detest the word strong when anyone says that you're so strong. Like, it's like, I'd be strong if I walked into a hospital, if I was like, make my heart so bad and then let me go through it. Like, I feel like that is strong, but like, you can't be strong for like a situation that you were circumstantially put into. Or like, yeah. I feel like strong is just like not the right word for it. Like, to me, it's like, I didn't choose to be strong. I have to be strong. If I'm not strong, or if I'm not like going through this, then like I'm creating a worse life for myself right now. Like, I'm doing this so that I can have a good quality of life. Right. So like the entire thing that like God is making you, like, that for me, and that's something that I've been actually thinking a lot about, is that like, do we just use God as a pinpoint to blame our problems on? I've actually had arguments about this with my parents, where I've just been like, why do you remember God, or why do all of us remember God in worse times more than good times? Say you get a job promotion. Yes, you'll say, thank you, God. Will you ever ask God, God, why did you give me this promotion? When you're over there in the chapel, you're like, God, why did you give me this problem? What did I do? I'm like, what did you do to get that promotion? Yeah. So I think this God is like this like gift-giving creature that sits above us in the clouds. I think that notion, again, not to offend anyone's religion over here, but I just think like that's like a justification method, honestly. Like the way that we see God is that it's just like a spiritual soul who has reached a period of salvation, and that we aim to walk on that path of salvation as them, and we see them as inspiration and guides. Like, we do not see them as in, like, okay, I will sit in front of you for 30 minutes and I'll get, like, a new car. Right, yeah. Like, that's, like, not the way that we see it. So I think that's also the mindset that I've grown up with. And the entire thing with karma, that, I don't know if I've just been growing up with that theory, but that theory makes a little bit more sense to me than, like, the God is giving me or God is making me. That, like, okay, each soul or each path has a sense of redemption almost. Like, you do bad things, you do good things in life. Like, every person's subject to sinning and not sinning. And it's like, you have a consequence for each of your actions. And this situation could just be a consequence of, like, my past actions. Yeah, yeah. So I think in that sense, you say, like, okay, at least you're getting rid of all your bad karma. It's tricky because, like, you would think, though, like, if this is a karma thing, then I should be given some time in my life to be able to, you know, undo whatever it is that I may have caused to other people in this life. Yeah. But yet we see children 3 years old, 2 years old, die of starvation, you know, and that kid has never had a chance to redeem themselves. So they've just lived a total of 3 years, and, you know, and all of a sudden they've done their karmic dues. I mean, there are a lot of things that can be, you know, can be kind of like, okay, how does that work? Like, why does it work that way? And does it make it okay, right, fair? But the most important thing is, you know, what resonates with you, I guess. And so this leads me to my next question, which is, in this process of like asking the why me, why is this happening to me? Have you tried to sort of explore other beliefs, philosophies, religions to explain this in a way that maybe resonates with you? Like, I mean, I asked like a Christian, like chapelist, like, why is this happening? And like, his theory was like, I think God is just trying to like teach you a lesson, / like trying to like make you stronger, / like trying to maybe make you more grateful for life. Yes, like, I am grateful for life. I'm very grateful. I'm very like, I don't want to say strong. Like, I don't consider myself strong right now. I feel like I'm like just like a person trying to, like, I don't know, get through it. Like,
Yeah.
but I haven't seen like a lot of other philosophies, like even like Hinduism, like very like close cousin to Jainism.
Yeah.
Hinduism is also very much karmic belief.
Yeah.
Like it is also very much deeply rooted into karma. So very similar reasoning comes out from there. There's like no, like it's like the thing with like children's starvation too. Like I was at like a pediatric hospital. Like now I've switched care to like an adult hospital, but in a pediatric hospital, you see children like in the pediatric hospice. Hospice means like 6 months or less to live. And you look at these kids and you're like, and you see like little babies. And you're like, babies who can't even talk are going through this? Like, why?
Yeah.
And at that point,
it makes
as
it
you
very
said,
hard to wrap your head around. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can't justify any theory at that point. So in times like those, I think there's just nothing else to justify this than to just be like, maybe everyone just has their own faith, or everyone just has their own set of problems that they have to go through. I was actually stumbled upon like a quote page or whatever, and I forget what the actual quote was, but the caption beneath it was a lot where like there like are like 5 lessons or something that like you need to learn like on your time here, which has been predetermined by like your past deeds. So I guess it relates to like the karmic theory in a way, but like those 5 lessons, like they will come back to you again and again in different situations until you learn that like lesson almost.
Yeah.
Where like, I don't know, maybe like gratefulness of life, like you'll like go through like a medical condition and then you might just be on a cliff, maybe risking your life or something, like, but like you'll like get it again and again until like you are 100% like solidly grateful for life. Maybe you've learned your lesson in all types of aspects that there's no aspect for you to question your lesson in almost.
I love that. I feel like that in itself is already like quite a good message for listeners to sort of take away. It's reassuring in a sense, but it also allows people to, you know, reflect back on certain cycles that they've maybe found themselves in. It could be like, you know, a cycle of toxic relationships. What is it? Why do I keep finding myself back in these kind of same kind of relationships? Or like, you know, a cycle of, you know, workplace bullying, or, you know, whatever it is. And it may come again in different forms, but, you know, there's that common thread between all of them. It might actually be a really good episode for a lot of people to sort of go back and reflect on that. Like, okay, what is this common thread here? What is it that I keep putting out there in the universe that keeps bouncing back to me? And what do I need to start turning around?
And I think a lot with that turning around, but like I think a lot of that turning around is that like humans like these days, I feel like it ties into the instant gratification that we were talking about, but that like we're so quick to blame now. Like toxic relationships, as you said, like, okay, someone gaslit me, someone did this to me, someone did that to me. And like maybe you'll reflect on yourself too, like, okay, maybe I was toxic, maybe I was doing this, like whatever. But like you just label yourself and then like you leave it at that, or like you try to fix it, but then it's also like, don't just like detach yourself from the situation, or don't just like label yourself and then like move on. There's has to be a thing of like, okay, toxic, whatever, like let's just take workplace. Okay, your boss is being hard on you or whatever, like my boss is toxic, fine. As an employee, I might also be toxic, but it's also like, how can I take that toxicity and how can I at least salvage our relationship rather than just like walking away? Or how can we make each other better? Like I feel like we're very quick to point, like my mom always says, like whenever you point one finger at someone, there are 3 fingers pointing back at you. Like make like the entire hand proper. Like don't start pointing fingers at each other. Like that's always the worst way to blame anyone.
Yeah. No, I really like that.
Exactly.
I'm gonna
work on yourself. You're in work. Like everyone's a work in progress. No one's perfect, but like definitely don't just take a label and like stick it on your head,
right?
Because you're more than just a label. So don't definitely don't do that. And also don't stay in a toxic relationship as well.
Ina, thank you so much for this amazing conversation today. If you enjoyed the episode and would like to help support the show, please follow and subscribe. You can rate and review your feedback on any of our platforms listed in the description. I'd like to recognize our guests who are vulnerable and open to share their life experiences with us. Thank you for showing us we're human. Also, a thank you to our team who worked so hard behind the scenes to make it happen.
Chris Trzynski.
Stefan Menzel.
The show would be nothing without you. I'm Jenica, host and writer of the show, and you're listening to Multispective.